Accessing agent files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the Golden Stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to illness, the part of Brian Sovryn, the Golden Stallion, will be played by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. And now, Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Woo! That's right, spilling my load of liberty all over your faces. It's the Golden Stallion of the tech world, and boy, have I got a show for you today. All right, who wants to be the first to sample my pimp juice, huh? Ladies? Maybe the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy? Anybody? All right, well, let's get started then. All right, as I said, we've got a great show for today. Have you heard about what Apple's done now? They've actually made flying drone dildos. Yes, that's right. Steve Jobs came out with a posthumous statement.
Hold on. Now, yesterday, you see, you gotta, here's the thing, you gotta have the pause. You have to have the dramatic pause.
The pregnant pause, if you will.
Yeah, the pregnant pause, where it's just like knowing that Steve Jobs was going. I mean, you got to kind of.
Okay, so I need to improve my delivery a little bit.
A little bit.
Can you wait? Just 5 seconds more for a load of liberty all over your face. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Golden Stallion of the tech world.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. I've learned from the best.
All right, let's roll. Yes, the Golden Stallion here with you, the real Golden Stallion, though. Boy, you've had enough Golden Stallion in you. I think that you. Well,
that's right.
Ready for?
I only want you for your pimp juice.
That's right.
That song is so ridiculous, by the way.
Juice.
So the other day we were like reminiscing about like 90s hip hop.
Dancing in the dark. Sorry, go ahead.
We were like listening to all these different songs, like from that era, the golden era of hip hop in the late 90s, mid to late 90s.
Diddy's my boy.
Yeah. Okay.
The sun don't shine forever, but as long as we're here, we might as well shine together. Come on.
We actually met somebody, a real live black person who knows.
Not New Hampshire.
No, of course not.
There's no black people here.
He even said, he was like, Boston, north of Boston, that is no place for a black man. I disagree with that, but I want people to live where they want. But
that's right.
It's too bad that there aren't more black people around here. I could probably use a little bit of a break from all the white people. But anyway.
Use some pimp juice?
Well, he was actually saying that he went to college with P. Diddy or something. Well, at the time he was called Puff Daddy, right?
Yeah, this guy's name begins with a J. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
he's
he went...
cool guy, of course.
He said Diddy was...
He didn't like him. He said they didn't get along, and he was a jerk.
Right, I couldn't believe it. I kind of actually talked with him outside the bathroom, and I'm just like, man, really? Diddy was an ass? Because I genuinely, I like Diddy. I listen to his albums often. I mean, I'm a fan.
But you don't know him personally.
No, I don't know him personally.
I mean... There's such a difference with celebrities, so I'm a B-list celebritarian. That's what I like to say. Not like the most famous of the most famous, but I'm known. I'm a radio
you're number
personality.
One in my heart.
Oh, thanks. You are too, Brian, for me. But as such, I get to talk with the A-list celebritarians, and they're just people. I think a lot of people treat them like they're some kind of on another level of
sure.
Humanness, but they're not. They're just people. And actually all celebrities are just people. And if you talk to them like a person, they appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I mean, I'm sure there's some degree of them wanting to be fawned over and wanting the attention and the accolades and stuff that comes with being a celebrity. Because otherwise, why would they be a celebrity, right? Unless they wanted that stuff on some level. But if you treat them like that, they won't consider you an equal. They won't be your friend. They won't open up to you,
No, that's true.
And so if you talk to them like a person, and if you can talk to them like a person, that's when you find out the really interesting stuff, because they'll talk to you like you're an equal. And yeah, where was I going with this? Oh, I was going to say about P. Diddy, he probably has different personas that different people see. And so if this guy who I like and trust actually met him in person and didn't like him, I would tend to believe that, yeah, maybe he actually really is an asshole in real life.
Yeah, I suppose it could be.
It's entirely possible for someone to be a jerk and have great music.
Yeah, but Diddy, if you're listening to Sovryn Tech, brother, I love you.
I doubt he's listening.
Hey, you never know.
You never know. That's
the
true.
Golden Stallion goes far and wide. I mean, it is.
We were just talking about this.
His legs are spread apart.
Oh my God. Well, this really is role reversal then. I was going to say, we were just talking about this the other day, how celebrities are kind of it's kind of expected now, unless you're to the level where you have someone else managing your tweets and stuff, that you will be available to respond to different people, just random fucks basically tweeting at you.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. I mean, how people expect you to be on that you're just constantly available or whatever. Yep. Sometimes I'll admit this. I don't do this with everybody. There's some people where, boy, they message me, I'm on. I'm with you. But other times I think sometimes you have to you almost have to pause and say, you kind of have to give the social signal that, hey, I'm really only going to respond when I have the time. I mean, I know that sounds kind of jerkish maybe, but
yeah,
but people, that expectation needs to go away, that you're just going to respond, instantaneously. And it's not that I think any less of any of these people. It's certainly not that, it's just.
Well, it gets to a certain point, just from our perspective, especially if you respond right away, that doesn't mean the messages stop. It means the person says, oh, they're available, I'll talk to them. And they keep messaging you.
Right.
And then you have to keep responding, or you feel obligated to respond. And so if you just don't respond right away, if you're busy or whatever, then they won't get that signal that you're available and want to talk to them.
Well, this is the thing. This is what happened with the internet, is that in a very real sense, everybody has become a celebrity. But the thing is that they don't have the budgets of celebrities to where you can pay secretaries to get back with people, or to where you have bodyguards to protect you from, quote unquote, whatever, creepers, stalkers, you take your pick, whatever the phrase may be. So that's a real issue that people don't realize, is that, the things that used to allow people to really interact with so many people at once, or to handle that level of interaction, where you have 5,000 friends or 20,000 followers on Twitter or whatever, people don't have the budget to manage that, and they certainly don't have the time. Otherwise, they're never going to get shit done. They're never going to get anything done. They're not going to have time for themselves to do things like watch movies.
But it's kind of you're right. I was going to say it's kind of like a double-edged sword, though, because it's harder to rise to that level of popularity unless you do interact with your fans at the beginning, when you don't have as many fans.
Yeah.
So then at what point do you stop?
Yeah, no, right. Well, I think what the point that you get to is that you kind of bundle up the interactions. I do this with Sovryn Tech, which, by the way, the hint about the cue about movies, we're actually going to talk about a couple movies in this.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is you kind of have what I do with important messages. I get a lot of the questions that are exactly the same. Right. By and large, and so I just bundle them up and answer them, all at once. Yeah. And that's about the only way you can really solve that, because it's good to interact with people. That's the thing. I think I sound like I don't mean to be coming off. I'm not an ass. I love talking to people, and especially people that listen to this show, and whoever else. But yeah. Anyway. So
right, about the movies.
Yes.
Because we have a tendency to like just ramble for.
But I think people love it. So because
I hope they like it.
I am not coming to
they
the table.
may not like this celebrity rant.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I am not coming to the table with notes. So so deal with it.
Me neither.
Anyway. Yeah. So we caught here, talk for a second.
Okay. Due to illness, the Golden Stallion is. Oh, he's back.
All right. I had to burp. So, all right. So we saw a couple of flicks, or actually we saw one movie. I took you to a movie last weekend.
Yes.
Okay. And it was something I was really excited about, something I wanted that I'd been looking forward to coming out, which was Jupiter Ascending. Okay, and this is a movie made by the Wachowskis, not the Wachowski brothers, because one's not a brother anymore. It's a sister now.
Yes.
And, right. And,
now they just call it the Wachowskis.
Right, just the Wachowskis. And I love their work, pretty much all of their work. I haven't seen Cloud Atlas yet, though, just because, as I understood it, the book was better, and I haven't read the book first, and I want to read the book first. But Bound, I enjoyed Bound. I enjoyed Speed Racer. I enjoyed all three of the Matrix films. I actually love all the Matrix films, as well as Matrix Online was great. The storyline in that was fantastic. The Animatrix, all that shit's great. I enjoyed Speed Racer. I think I already said that, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That was incredible. And for one of the reasons that Jupiter Ascending was good, one of the reasons I love Speed Racer was they brought on this really, as I understand it at the time, was a very little known composer named Michael Gaetano to do the score. And he did an incredible job. Like, it was amazing. And then fortunately, Michael Gaetano went on to do the score for the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. And those scores are fucking amazing. And also they used Michael Gaetano, and I don't know if they used him in Cloud Atlas, but they used Michael Gaetano for Jupiter Ascending. And the very first nice thing one can say about Jupiter Ascending is that it had a tremendous, I've listened to the soundtrack twice over now, and it is a fantastic score.
Michael Gaetano, it was a good score.
Yeah, he does not fail to impress in that regard. And that alone was enough reason for me to for Jupiter Ascending to get made, to just have that amazing music out there. But anyway, we went and saw this. We caught it. Was it a Saturday night?
Yep.
Yeah. So day or so after, after its premiere. And so we tried to help somewhat with very dismal box office performance. This is a movie that had $175 million or so budget. And I don't even think it did 20 million on opening weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in large part is that the critics panned this movie. I mean, nobody was coming out. Well, a couple sites may have said it was a great movie, but nobody was saying, like, everybody's just trashing this film. They thought it was so terrible. They didn't understand parts of it. They thought it was derivative. Well, maybe they didn't even think it was derivative, because I think they said they thought it was original, but I guess they thought it was cheesy, amongst other things. So.
Huh. Well, I mean, I know you, Brian, and when the critics say that something is terrible, you immediately say, oh, they're crap. We're going to go see this. This must be a great movie.
Yeah. I've been wrong about that, though, before.
Yeah.
In fact, one famous case, I'll bring it up, okay, was a birthday movie. I had the fortune, my birthday is May 12th, okay, and usually the big summer blockbusters start hitting, the first or second week of May. So I always have what's called my birthday movie, whatever that may be. Like the first Spider-Man film that came out in the late 90s or whatever was just fucking awesome. That's besides the point. Anyway, but one movie that came out, it was one of my birthday movies, and it was based on a book. And this is arguably the largest, bigger than Dune. It is the largest, as in by page number, the largest science fiction book ever made. And it's made by the Ron. Do you know who the Ron is?
No.
You do. But it's L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh.
Okay, so some people say L. Ron is the Ron.
Oh.
Yeah, that's some kind of running joke for him. Anyway, it's...
So like Scientology... L. Ron Hubbard.
That L. Ron Hubbard,
okay.
Yeah. So he wrote, but he was actually a great science fiction author. He's a phenomenal science fiction author. He did Mission Earth, and he did Battle...
I mean, you could argue that, like, the whole Scientology is like a giant sci-fi
Sure.
thing.
It came from a great writer. That's why I guess a lot of people fell for it. So anyway,
right.
but he had a movie called Battlefield Earth, or he had a book called Battlefield Earth. And this is one of the greatest science fiction books ever. I mean, it's a tremendous Absolutely tremendous book. And the movie was getting, actually a trilogy was going to get made out of this. And there was a big deal about it because, the head of the Church of Scientology, that being John Travolta. No, I don't think he's the head, but anyway, he's arguably one of the most well-known next to Tom Cruise.
He's like a deacon or like a bishop, right?
Yeah, he's like a cardinal. But John Travolta was going to star in it. And, and this was what I said, because and I remember so well the newspapers, because newspapers still mattered when this came out. The newspaper said Battlefield Earth bombs, and they gave it like a half star. Okay. Out of 5 stars.
Oh,
yeah. And I was like, there's no way. I said, look, even if what's put on celluloid, because they used to put this stuff on celluloid too, instead of digital.
Boy, we're really reaching back.
Even if just a quarter of the material is accurately portrayed on the film from this book, from Battlefield Earth, which it is, it's a great book. It's going to be amazing because this book is just so goddamn good. But I went and saw the movie. I went and saw Battlefield Earth. Bought all my friends tickets. There was 9 of us. We all, well, anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but we rolled up and we saw it, and it was terrible. It was atrocious, but I was positive. I mean, I was as certain as you could be that there's no way this movie could be bad. And
you were proven wrong. Well, at least your mind was open enough to say, well, the conclusion I already came to before seeing the film wasn't right.
Yeah. I mean, it was terrible. It was real. Even the special edition with extended scenes when it came out on DVD, still terrible.
What was so terrible about it?
I don't know. It just didn't work. It just didn't happen. And one of the things they were selling for it, which was big, was that the kind of the secondary director for Episode 1 of Star Wars was going to be the director for this, but it was kind of his first time on his own, and maybe he just wasn't ready to work without a net. I don't know. It was really, really bad. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I can't bring myself to do it. So I've read the book multiple times. Battlefield Earth, the book is just, it's intense. It's wonderful. So my point, but one of my points in getting to share that story, and I think I might have cut you off and you've probably completely forgotten what you were going to say. And I apologize for that, love.
No.
So,
no problem.
but one, the point I want to bring is that if I am certain I'm going to like something, I am fully prepared to have my mind completely changed and be dead wrong at the end of the movie is one of the reasons I also bring up that story, because I don't want people to think, well, I was so hyped up for it that I just went in there and said, no matter what, this movie's going to be great. No, I don't fall trap to that sort of shit. Never have. And so anyway, so Battlefield Earth did suck.
You're as objective as they come.
Damn right. Ayn Rand would be proud. So, but Jupiter Ascending, genuinely, and we might as well get this right out of the way before we get into specifics. And I want to hear your opinion on it. But I mean, genuinely, it was a great movie. I thought it was. I left incredibly pleased.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I was really impressed by the special effects.
Yeah,
I thought the story was creative.
Yeah, it was
cool.
very original.
Yeah. Well, it was very Illuminati.
Yeah.
I know you like it. I mean, okay, come on. At the end of the film, there was DNA double helixes with astrological symbols in them.
Okay.
Spinning around in space.
Right. There's a difference between I get your point, but there's a difference between Illuminati imagery and the Wachowskis' just overall general desire, it seems, to explain history and explain where odd things come from. They did it with The Matrix too, where they tried to explain ghosts and they tried to explain vampires and all this stuff. And some people, actually, Ian Freeman, he also enjoyed this movie. And he had said, though, that it was very much just the space vampires storyline. So he didn't think it was very original. I thought it was pretty original. Or it was original in that it was a new franchise, at least. Certainly it wasn't. There's really nothing else quite like it, even though the best thing I could compare this movie to is Flash Gordon from 1981. Flash, because the thing with this movie is that it didn't explain a whole lot, and maybe that's what freaked people out. It didn't explain a whole lot, but it, but that's what I liked about it, is that there was just all this real grandeur and a lot of detail that you're just dying to know what the hell all that means, which was the same thing with Flash Gordon. For its time, you know, it had a lot of like just far out stuff out of nowhere, and you're just like wondering, hey, what's the story behind that? You know, and I like that. I don't need everything explained to me. I want to figure it out, you know, and maybe that's just it. Maybe people are just so dense, you know, so that they have to have things explained to them, you know, pound for pound, page for page, you know, for them to really get it. But go ahead. What other thoughts do you have on the film?
Well, one thing I didn't like about it was some of the ideas that were portrayed in it. And I don't know if I can say this without spoiling the plot, but
no. Well, all right, let's get that out of the way.
Okay.
I will not be held hostage by the spoilers. So,
okay.
So here's your one thing, and I've said before, I don't give a shit about spoiler alerts. Here's your one spoiler alert. You can turn this off now, and you can go give that movie some money. If you want, it's worth it. In my opinion, it's fully worth it. But otherwise, go ahead, spoil away.
Well, I guess I can say it without spoiling the plot. But basically, the idea of like blood is thicker than water, like protect your family at all costs. Essentially, the main character comes from a shitty, abusive family, and she finds
she's
out
Russian.
She finds out that she's some kind of royalty, and she actually owns the earth. And she's like the queen of the earth.
Universe.
But she goes back to like cleaning toilets with her family, and she risks like the whole planet to save her family, who are shitty, who are very abusive to her. And like what her cousin like convinced her to like sell her eggs, and he took most of the money from it. I mean, it was just like awful. Like, why do you care about saving these people when they've treated you like shit? And, you know, forced you to kind of slave and work for them. And
yeah.
So,
yeah, I know you didn't like that part of it.
No.
Yeah, because there's like a choice where she has to make to save them or not. I mean, eventually, like 5 minutes later, she's like, well, I'll sacrifice all of us to make sure everybody on Earth can live and whatever.
But she's like thinking about it. And she cares about her family. And
understood.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense. I mean, and like this whole, you know, this thing that she's a queen of, like this empire, it feels very much like, and I don't think you've read these books, Stephanie, but Ian M. Banks, he was a Scottish science fiction writer. He wrote a series called the Culture series, which is actually a like this not an empire, but a like galactic society that is really anarchist. It's an individualist anarchist thing, and they're like just an insanely high tech. I mean, like way more than Star Trek ever dreamed of, which we have another movie to get to, and we'll get to that later. And this very much felt like the Culture series. If someone's going to say, "Oh, this is just like the Culture," well, I know I'm the king of the nerds. Okay. Anyway, but it's like the Culture series gone particularly evil, gone like particularly wrong. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. But now that's the thing with this film that I think a lot of libertarians might not like, is this kind of had an anti-capitalist message. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it definitely did. Like the scene where the cousin is like convincing Jupiter, the main character, to like sell her eggs, and she's going to get like, I don't know, $15,000 from it. And he keeps like 10,000 and he gives 5 to her. Mm-hmm. And she's like,
it's all to buy a TV.
And it's all to buy a TV. Yeah. And she says, well, why do you get to keep most of the money? It's my eggs. And he goes, it's capitalism, baby, or something like that. And and then there's another couple of lines where they like kind of rag on capitalism.
Well, and then there's like the whole fact that this you know.
Oh, right. The whole plot of the movie. So
is that the Earth is going to get harvested.
Yeah. So there's this royal family that lives somewhere in space, and basically it's like the tax farm analogy, but like on steroids. And so these people are like thousands of millennia. No, they're like thousands of years old.
Right.
But they look young and beautiful. And the way that they stay young and beautiful is by creating some kind of like a serum or nectar. And it's made from people. It's
Soylent
made from
Green is people.
Yeah. It's made from people. And so they need like, you know, hundreds of people to make like one little vial of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like taking baths in it and things like that. So clearly slaughtered millions of people just so they can be young and beautiful forever. And they say that like basically the whole Earth and thousands of other planets are just existing for this purpose, to create meat for them to harvest and like make into this elixir of youth.
Yeah, so the elite can live on forever.
Yeah.
You know, and all this, the 1%.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently there was some queen that like, there was the queen of this royal family like thought that was wrong or something, and she was going to try to like stop the whole people harvesting thing, and she was murdered. Right. And so then her 3 children are like duking it out, and they're varying degrees of evil in different ways, and they're kind of fighting amongst each other, and they all have these family tensions. And Jupiter, this girl who's like a cleaning lady, you know, born to like a Russian immigrant and just super poor and lives with this giant family that's not very nice. She is a genetic recurrence of this queen of the universe, and she's got the same DNA by chance or something like that.
And so by contract,
she is the queen of everything.
Yeah, because she has the same DNA, she technically inherits all of her stuff back. Yeah. And they apparently are aware that this happens, and they prepare for that sort of thing. So it's pretty clear. I think this is actually a part of the movie message I really enjoyed, is that it's pretty clear just how crazy shit can get when you take contracts to such a galactic level. And licensing and all that. And there's actually there's
a scene where she's trying to claim her title to the Earth, and she goes to it's basically like a planet of bureaucracy, and she's waiting in line at like 25 different DMVs.
Yeah, exactly.
People are getting bribed and stuff, and she has to claim this title to the Earth, and then she finally gets it after a day of like waiting in line.
It's hilarious because she's going from office to office, and they're like, okay, no, you need to go to this office, and you need to go to this office and get this from here and get this from here. And eventually the only way she gets anything done is the guy that's helping her, this poor robot, like has to bribe the guy at the desk.
Exactly.
You know, so it had that, and I'm sure most ANCAPs that would watch this would just flip the fuck out saying, no, look, you have to have contracts, folks. You can't, this is terrible. This is a hit piece against the very nature of capitalism, contracts, you know. And
I mean, like, who's enforcing these contracts? These people supposedly have like supernatural powers, and they can do all this stuff with technology. Like, how are contracts relevant? You know, like, who's going to actually, what are they going to do if someone breaks the contract?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if humanity gets to the point to where we're literally writing out licenses and fucking, lease papers
for the
and
entire
contract papers
planet.
for entire planets.
Yeah.
I don't know how we could have possibly gotten there, could possibly get to that point without getting beyond that.
Show them your blockchain.
Show them your blockchain. Holy shit. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so it did have these kind of like anti-capitalist kind of themes, and
Sure.
I guess I can see what they mean by that, because they're talking about the aspects of, quote, capitalism as most people define it, not as Ayn Rand defined it, not as like a true free market or anything like that, but you know, the thing that most people conceive of as capitalism, which is basically companies amassing a lot of power and doing questionably ethical things with them, and like owning things that maybe like don't really fall into the category of property, and like people and planets and things like that. And anyway, so they were portraying and ragging on those things about like the popular definition of capitalism. Yeah,
and I thought it was funny. I large part, I liked it.
I could appreciate that. I wasn't offended by the whole like, capitalism stuff. Yeah. So anyway, when we were watching it, within like the first 20 minutes, I mean, just this insane shit starts going on. Channing Tatum's, one of the lead characters. Oh, we didn't say this yet. We were watching it in 3D.
Yeah, we did see it. Right.
There's this awesome local movie theater that's like, it's small, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's like the whole sign on the movie theater. It says theater, but it's really like EATR, like, because it's like not all the letters are lighting up.
Yeah, it's this really local outfit, but I've always loved those, because those are people that are really running that, just out of the love of the movies, and I really like.
I'm sure they're kind of struggling, because like we go there on Saturday nights and there's almost no one there.
Yeah, some nights I see it pretty loaded. There are, depending if it's a big movie coming out, there's a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy.
We usually go to the late movies too. Like we don't go before like 9:30. Yeah. So that's when most people in New Hampshire.
Right. But it's so nice to go to these little theaters as compared to like the gigantic AMCs and all this shit.
Oh yeah.
And there's something to be had for, something to be said for going to those too. And like, of course, in these little theaters, you're never going to have Dolby Atmos and all that, which I'd love to experience, like in New York City or something. I get that. But at the same time,
what is that?
Dolby Atmos is it's a sound technology that Dolby developed, where it's 3D sound. And the idea is that it's not just speakers along the left or right of you creating a surround sound. It's also speakers above you that push the sound down kind of onto you, and it creates a 3D sound. And it's pretty. I got to experience a demo, and it was pretty impressive. I didn't get to experience an actual full on movie watching it, but the demo I saw was, boy, that really hit that did it. So anyway, the Enterprise was flying by and into darkness, and boy, that was serious. So anyway, but I do enjoy like a good little local theater. I really can appreciate that. But yeah, so 20 minutes into the film, we're watching this, and like Channing Tatum's character, who is trying to save Mila Kunis, whatever her name is. That's terrible. That makes me sound so bad.
Mila Kunis.
It's Mila Kunis. And like he has like these gravity boots that are pretty much like flying roller skates.
Yeah. And
he's just going all over the place. And I'm watching it and going, what are people talking about? This is incredible. Like, this is so cool. And there's this whole, battle little sequence going on, people are, blasting right and left and everything. And I mean, and it's just, it looks like it's really, you've never seen anything quite like this before, as far as effects go and all that. And it was so good. The action was tremendous. All of that was, the acting was fine. Sean Bean was in it. I mean, plenty, tons of great acting.
They had little gray aliens, and they tried to explain like alien abductions because so like the grays are like the henchmen of like some of these royal family people,
right?
And they go to Earth and they have the ability to like erase people's memory, and like somebody takes a picture of them and then can't remember how she took the picture, and there's this like archangel guy who's like explaining it all and saying, well, we erase people's memory, we repair the buildings we destroy really fast overnight, and there's always a few people we don't get to, but nobody believes them.
Exactly. And like how somehow she gets a picture of them, but then at the same time, like she doesn't remember it at all. What's all that about? But yeah, that was cool. Yeah, and they tried to explain some things. Like there's even a line in it where Tatum's character says, like we're responsible for the myths behind vampires and werewolves and angels. And of course, at the end of the movie, he has wings, and you can kind of see where all that comes from. Those
wings were really sexy, I have to say.
Yeah. It's something I really liked is like everybody in this, system or whatever, they all in this, galactic society, they all wear all black all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, perfect. I'm like, I knew it. I'm way ahead of the curve. I'm totally into galactic fashion. Everybody's wearing triple black. Like even his wings were black. It was badass. So, but so, overall, I thought it was a great film, pretty basic. I mean, I get annoyed with the fact that, you have these gigantic galactic societies, and yet there's still, other than the culture series that I mentioned earlier, and yet there's still like kings and queens.
Yeah.
It's like that's nonsense, or like, this is something I complained about with Thor 2. Was it called The Dark World or whatever? But in Thor 2, like this, you have this incredibly advanced civilization that literally are the gods, the Norse gods of history, on Earth. And the way that they get attacked and the way that they solve the problem is by going to war. I'm like, you can bring people back from the dead. You can do all this bullshit, whatever, all this incredible, medical technology and all this great technology, and you still solve your problems with fucking war.
Yeah.
Like you're pathetic, and I mean, obviously it's a fictional universe, but it just shows the simple mindedness, in my opinion, of a lot of the writers at times. And Straczynski might've written that, so I should be careful on my words.
Well,
but anyway.
You're right though. It's amazing that to conceive the idea that people don't know in the future how to solve problems without violence. Like they've invented all this amazing technology and they can do all this stuff, but they can't figure out how to solve problems without violence.
Yeah. So, I mean, which I guess maybe I shouldn't be so harsh, because honestly, most of the people that are thinking ahead of the curve on how the future society can be, like anarchists and, ANCAPs and libertarians, they pretty much want to solve their problems largely with violence too. So I guess I shouldn't be so harsh.
Not all.
Not all of them.
They're trying.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make a generalization like that.
No, but...
I can see what you're saying. There's more violence than you'd care to see in libertarian circles.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too.
More boasting about it than should ever happen. But anyway, so overall, I mean, I don't know that we need to discuss much more of the plot on it. Some of the points I want to bring up that did you have something?
Well, I was just thinking, you told me when I asked you, like, what is this movie about? Why do you want to see it? You said something like, well, there's this royal family. And then I was like, oh, okay, say no more.
royal family, you're referring to perhaps the conspiracy of the British royal family, that they are actually lizards. And
funny enough, there were
Germany.
lizard guys in the movie, like as henchmen of some of the royal family
there were
people.
lizards in this. Like you find out what happened to the dinosaurs.
Genuine lizards.
Right. I mean, that's something too, is like that's the thing, is that I get your point, like that maybe there was some, symbolism, some esoteric symbolism in this, but largely I think it was just the Wachowskis trying to be clever in explaining away history in a more logical fashion.
It didn't work to get the critics on their side.
No, definitely not. So, because
they didn't get the memo about that.
Yeah, because like one of their theories is that the dinosaurs were actually destroyed by this, these people that wanted to harvest the earth, and that they genetically altered them to be soldiers for them. And there's actually a tremendous fight scene between one of these winged dinosaurs, and which I guess that's where dragons would come from, right? And and Tatum's character, which was that was pretty wild to see. Which that lends to some interesting theories and stories of like when I grew up. When I was actually, brought up in the church, not in synagogue at that point, one of the theories is that dinosaurs were actually like that in the antediluvian world, which is the pre-flood, pre-Noah's flood world, that humans were incredibly advanced and they actually genetically altered creatures and they created the dinosaurs. And that's why they weren't saved in the flood. But that raises a whole slew of other issues like Job 40 and 41 and all that. So anyway, that's the crazy people in crazy religions. So yeah. But there's, to the critics' points, the critics were trashing on this, and again, Stephanie, you don't think that any of that's really well founded?
I don't know. I'm not a movie buff. I don't watch very many movies at all.
Yeah,
but. You've basically been complaining about the critics. So why don't you say what's on your mind about that?
Well, some of their points I thought were
Well, you said that they missed like a lot of references that they probably should have known if they're a movie critic, like the whole like bee thing.
Well, they don't have to know that, but this is the thing. Okay, so one of the major initial concerns or complaints about this movie is that they didn't understand what was going on. All right. And so he said, like, there's this scene where Mila Kunis's character, Jupiter, she's finding out that she's a queen, and these bees, like, they're going to visit Sean Bean's character, and these bees start flying around her. And the movie critic said, I don't understand. What is the point of this? This is stupid. And, Sean Bean just kind of, his character just says, oh, the bees don't lie. And she's like, well, and the critic said it looked amazing in 3D, but it looked like it was just that. It was just to somehow show off the 3D or whatever. And the instant I read that, and this is before I even saw the film, I said, no. I know what this is. And I've yet to read a single review of the film that points this out. I know what they were referencing. They're referencing Midrash in Judaism, which talks about Asenath, which is Joseph's, Joseph in the coat of many colors, who takes over Egypt, quote unquote, takes over Egypt, or becomes very important in Egypt, maybe the more gentle statement. Joseph, he gets an Egyptian wife.
Yeah.
But this can't be. You can't have Egyptian genetics, making...
Because the mother has to be Jewish.
Right.
For the babies to be Jewish.
Yeah, according to Rabbinic Judaism. And so one of the ways they tell this story in Midrash, which is how Midrash is generally these stories, kind of folklore made to explain away these inconsistencies or these problems, where, Joseph meets this woman, Asenath. He sees her and there's this whole story around it, but she wants to be, an Israelite, a Hebrew, just like Joseph. And so she goes through this process where these bees, again, she is becoming, in a very real sense, the queen of Egypt, because Joseph is really running the show at this point for the Pharaoh. And the sequence happens where suddenly these bees start flying around her. Okay. And that's, it's to me, it's clear. It's like, okay, you're doing, this is a reference,
that's a reference to the story of
to this
and Joseph,
ancient, right. To this, because half the time they're telling you what happened throughout the history of the earth. So why wouldn't they tell that story too, to kind of show that off? And
then the way that they explained it, they didn't directly say that in the movie.
No,
but
they did explain
the way that they explain it was that bees recognize royalty, and they won't sting somebody who is royalty.
Right.
and it's in your genetics. And that explanation made sense to me, even if I didn't get the biblical reference.
Yeah, that's fine.
But the critics were like really ragging on that and saying like, oh, it didn't make any sense. It was out of place in the movie. And
well, it's crazy because, I mean, like royal jelly, where does that come from?
Bees.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, so all that, it makes perfect sense. And this is the thing. It's like, okay, fine. The critic doesn't understand what's going on. That doesn't mean you give the film, whatever, 2 thumbs down because you don't understand. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you don't have a grasp of history to understand what's going on.
Too bad Marshall Rosenberg passed away, because what would he say to those movie critics? Well, that's your judgment about the film.
Yeah.
So you are upset because the film didn't meet your need for understandability, for clarity.
But
I see that you're annoyed.
But you see, this is the thing, is that it used to be, I remember critic reviews from years ago, and it used to be that when you didn't understand something or when something was being alluded to, that was considered high art when you didn't understand what was going on.
Well, if aren't the critics supposed to understand it, because they're supposed to be the ones who are able to interpret the high art, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But then
they can't.
I mean, they're dull.
Well, they're not doing their job. They're incompetent.
Yeah. Right. So, whatever. I felt really, really frustrated that something's getting knocked just because, like, okay, so I get it. You don't understand, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean you get to make this like sweeping, or yes, you can. It's voluntary. You can do it. Okay. But
Wow.
It's just, it really frustrated me. And so they had other points too, but that's the thing is like, this movie, this is an overall problem with critics, is that somehow there's this like collective thought that every movie has to appeal to everybody, and I think movies do need to be graded on their merits. All right. If you're a Ninja Turtles fan, well, then yes, you're going to like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie more than somebody that isn't. And maybe impressively, it's made for you with lots of little hints and clues that only other little Ninja Turtle fans are going to get. And that's fine. That's okay. That doesn't mean the movie's bad. That just means that it's for them. It's not for you. And this is the thing. This is this wide sweeping, like everything's got to be for everybody. Boy, that gets under my skin. Because even if the director or the movie makers or whatever aren't like forcing it upon you, and obviously they're not, okay, it's like the critics are seemingly having to force it upon you and whatever. And so I think a large part, and ironically, we're being critics right now, but in large part, like that whole industry of the critics is just, it died with Roger Ebert. So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's lost.
Does anyone pay attention to what critics say? I mean,
I would
seems
think
like
so,
now
considering that movie bombed on that weekend.
Yeah, I guess they are. I was just thinking, like, now it seems like the internet has taken away those gatekeepers. Like you're not opening up a newspaper and reading movie reviews to see which movies you want to see that weekend, right? It's like people can rate it online and anyone can give it a rating.
Yeah.
So it really matters whether the movie is popular, not what like certain critics think of it.
Yeah. And it's not like, well, you can't game that, can you? Anyway.
Well, yeah, review systems, of course, can be gamed.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the professional critics are setting the tone for it. I mean, can you even be a professional movie critic now? Can you actually like make a living off of giving your opinions about films?
I think it's still something. It's still kind of out there. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes is still huge, but this is the thing. This is what I'm getting at. And I shouldn't say, all right, look, people aren't stupid for not knowing about Asenath and all that. Of course they're not. But what I think the critic should more say is, this isn't for me. Instead of giving it this film gets 2 stars and that's its rating for everybody. You know what I mean? It should be more, I give this 2 stars. It didn't like you were saying with Rosenberg, it didn't meet my needs for this or whatever, or, I didn't find it enjoyable, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's what I've tried to shift my own mindset to, whether it's a work of art or a talk or a video or whatever. I say it didn't appeal to me. I wasn't into it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Not it was bad. Because it was bad. That's not a factual statement, right? That's your opinion, but you're saying your opinion as though it's fact. So, anyway, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, do you have other thoughts on?
I'm just still pondering, I'm just still kind of wondering about the whole phenomenon of movie critics and where do they get paid and how do they do it and why do people listen to them?
Yeah, it's the underbelly of journalism. It's definitely something in the lower offices that that people would have to write about. But yeah, I'm shocked it's not dead. That's
it seems like one of these anachronistic kind of careers. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like game reviews are even that's even an area where they're far more where it's necessary to have a reviewer.
Yeah,
it's not like Consumer Reports because it's not like movies are some kind of functional thing that it's not like reviewing a car. Where there are really objective standards.
Yeah.
Does it go fast? Does it turn well? Does it do this? That are really important. That's interesting. So, but yeah, I've had a long history of completely disagreeing with the critics. You pointed that out earlier, and it's very true. Like Jurassic Park 3, love Jurassic Park 3, and no, the story's not good. But that doesn't matter. I wanted to see a bunch of dinosaurs running around because that was still an incredible novel thing at the time. Which, by the way, we saw the trailer for Jurassic World.
Oh, that looked awesome.
Yeah,
I want to see it.
We'll be going to go see that. And that's another one where people are already complaining
Can we see it in 3D?
Yes, we will go. We'll go see it in 3D. That'll be exciting.
Good.
So, anyway, so nothing else on Jupiter Ascending?
Well, the one thing I wanted to say about it was that, so the title, Jupiter Ascending.
Yes.
It comes from an astrological thing. It's a reference to astrology.
Yes.
Where there's so everybody knows the sun sign, which is the birth month of the person. Mm-hmm. And it's I'm a Gemini and you're a Taurus. That's your sun sign, right? But there's other signs depending on the position of all the planets when you're born. And then there's also the rising or ascendant sign, which is, it depends on the time that you were born, the minute and the hour.
Right.
And that's what, I don't know, what was on the horizon, what constellation was on the horizon, or what portion of the sky was appearing to rise as...
Well, you're very knowledgeable about this.
Well, yeah, because I used to be into it. And now, I mean, of course...
What?
I think it's crap.
What? I can't believe it.
This was my transition phase of
such a complete lack of reason.
It's anti-mind, anti-life, anti-reason. This was way before I actually got myself straightened out. This was my transition phase out of religion, because my head had been filled with Judaism, with all these crazy stories when I was a real little kid. And I didn't buy into the whole Judaism thing, and I knew I didn't want to be Jewish, but I wasn't completely out of the crazy supernatural out of touch with reality stuff yet. And so I got into astrology and I started reading all about it.
Right.
And of course now I think it doesn't follow that the position of celestial bodies could affect your personality at all. But I got the reference to, what they were trying to do with the title of the film.
Yes.
And actually at the beginning of the film, she's describing Jupiter, the main character is describing her the story of her birth and how her mother and father met and how her father was killed and her mother immigrated to the US and blah, blah, blah. And she said, I was born at this time with these zodiac signs or whatever. But of course, astrology is complete bullshit. And then it shows her as a teenager, cleaning this toilet because she's working and being really poor.
Yeah. And it's ironic too, because she was actually born on a boat in the ocean.
Yeah.
So she's talking about she's born without a country, which is interesting. I wondered, this is actually finer points. This is interesting in that they all wear all black. And one of the production houses for this movie.
Oh yeah, it was called Anarchios or something.
Yeah, Anarchos Entertainment or something like that. Which I thought that was kind of interesting. So there was almost I wondered if this queen giving up her she's I'm not going to kill anymore, and this queen character that Jupiter was kind of taking over.
Yeah, maybe it was some kind of anarcho red and black kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there was definitely anti-capitalist kind of dialogue in the movie.
Sure. Yeah. So, but it's interesting because also she doesn't take on the mantle of being the queen. At the end, she just, still hangs out on Earth, which is unfortunate. She sticks with her abusers.
Yeah.
That being her family.
Yeah. That was really weird.
Yeah. So, but
At least, like, why? I don't know why she would clean toilets, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, the movie didn't do well. The astrological thing was interesting. So I think you're right. There was definitely some esotericism in this film, to be had. Sadly, my best hope is that at the very least they'll make comic books because the Wachowskis do love the comic book medium. They've made a bunch over the years. Maybe they'll make comic book sequels to this because the way it's doing, I guess it did well worldwide. It did pretty solid on release worldwide, but I mean, they got to make up $175 million, and that's probably not happening, largely because these critics just didn't get it. They didn't understand.
Hey, Brian,
yes.
Do you know what time you were born?
What time?
Yeah, like what time of day?
Yeah, it was after, I want to say 7:03 p.m. But I could
was
be
that
wrong
in New
about
York?
that. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to make you a zodiac chart.
Oh my God! Like, how important are the minutes? Because I could have the minute wrong.
It's not that important unless you're on the cusp. It's like within the hour. Like,
is this on the birth certificate?
Usually.
I'm trying to think where I saw it. I could go look
so.
at my birth certificate, but anyway, you go ahead and rock that out.
Okay, yeah, carry on.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that more of this story gets told, but it's going to have to be in comic books, not in novels, because I think that it's a very visual film, much like Star Wars is the same thing, where I don't think Star Wars books, even though they are passable because the source content is so good, Star Wars comics blow away Star Wars novels, in my opinion. And I think people know that. That's why Dark Horse was so successful when perhaps Bantam wasn't always. But anyway, so I hope something happens more with this because I really enjoyed the universe. I definitely consider it to be the modern Flash Gordon, and I loved Flash Gordon, and I understand that not everybody liked Flash Gordon from way back, that they didn't get the cheesiness, they didn't get the over-the-topness, and all of that. But if you appreciate that, you will love Jupiter Ascending. If you love Flash Gordon, I can't see why someone wouldn't really, really love this because it's being done on such a really grand scale. It's really something to see. But it just goes to show, because it did well overseas, I think it just goes to show that, here's a collectivist statement. Americans have terrible taste. By and large, they really do. They do in music. I don't know.
You're a cultural critic, Brian.
Yeah, there it is. So, I think by and large, or at least if they don't have bad taste, they're certainly always way behind the times, as far as what's actually like pretty good, or it takes a while to get here. Or what, I don't know. So anyway, are we sure? Are we done on Jupiter Ascending? Anything else to get out there?
Yes, you've got a very interesting zodiac chart.
Oh my! What do we?
Clearly, we're destined to be lovers.
Really?
I don't know, but it's been like probably almost 20 years since I looked at this stuff. But so let's see. Your moon sign is Scorpio, and that's my ascendant sign. Oh, and your sun sign is Taurus, which is my moon sign.
You're ascending on me,
that's right.
All right.
Anyway, so we'll save this for later.
Okay. Yeah. So, maybe you should do like a palm reading. Let's see, my love line. Boy, that's pretty long. Look at the size of that hand. Anyway, no.
Indeed.
You know what that means.
So what was the next movie? Oh yeah. Last night.
Yeah, last night for our Lupercalia celebration.
We had a cool.
We
had a great time yesterday. Yeah. We've had a great time this whole weekend, but we've been celebrating Lupercalia, and as part of that, we watched a movie in bed last night at the end of our festivities.
Yeah,
and it was pretty good. You've been wanting to show me. So we've been watching the whole series of the Next Generation Star Trek, The Next Generation, rewatching it. I say rewatching it because we both watched it back in the 90s as we were growing up. It's funny because some of these shows, like we're watching them, Brian, and I'm just suddenly reminded of something that like happened to me when I was like 10 years old, Right. When I first saw that episode for the first time.
Yeah, it definitely takes you back.
It takes you back, yeah.
Because I think for you and certainly for me, so we watched Star Trek Nemesis, which is the last night, which was the last Star Trek The Next Generation film. Mm-hmm. And, The Next Generation, I think it was true for you and it was true for me. I mean, it was so formative growing up. This was like Captain Picard in particular was the hero. I mean, he was,
he's awesome.
Yeah, right. And growing up, there's just a lot of, I don't know, it speaks to you when the content's that well thought out, and which in large part, Star Trek is a pretty well thought out universe, well laid out. It has some inconsistencies and some incongruities.
Yeah, some pretty big ones.
Yeah,
like the whole money thing.
Yeah, that right. They're back and forth on that, but largely it's a well thought out universe, and so that helps with one's perception of it and one's acceptance of what it's trying to say, and that's another hallmark of Star Trek, is that it often has a moral message, to share. So we're both rewatching The Next Generation. We're in season 4, I think.
Wow, yeah, we're all the way in season 4, aren't we?
Yeah, and you're. What is we'll get into Nemesis here in a second, but what's your assessment of Star Trek now?
I love it. I'm just, aside from
The Next Generation, that is.
Aside from being taken back to the age of 10 and 11, when I was watching it every night. And actually it's pretty helpful in like processing childhood stuff, like sometimes it jogs these certain memories, that you may have repressed or forgotten or whatever. So that's cool. It's interesting to do that. But, other than that, I'm seeing so many things that I didn't see the first time I watched it, like namely the kind of interactions between adults that I didn't understand some of them at the time because I just wasn't, I didn't have the social skills to pick up on them.
Right.
And like the romance stuff and like, because it just a lot of it goes over your head when you're like that age. And also some of Captain Picard's libertarian stuff is just amazing. Like he'll give these speeches about how like freedom is the most important thing, and like no one is so important that they can overcome the rights of the individual or whatever. And like like about imprisoning, like whenever there's cultures that are like imprisoning people, he's always on the side of the accused, they're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah,
and all
he even
stuff.
says imprisonment is an injury no matter the reason. He even says that, which is right on.
Yeah. One of the things that is really interesting is that his character, Captain Picard, is uncomfortable with kids.
Yeah.
And that, I never picked up on that the first time I saw it. And like some of the ways that the treatment of children is portrayed on the ship, like especially Wesley Crusher, whose character like becomes an adult as the show is going on
the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just the way he's treated at the beginning versus how he's treated once he grows up a little bit more. That was interesting because, it really kind of reflects the prevailing societal attitudes. You'd think 400 years in the future, they would have had the whole peaceful parenting thing down, but they don't actually.
Well, yeah.
They're actually not very kind to little kids.
Well, I think it's important to let's talk about that for a second. The character of Wesley was hated by Star Trek fans at the time. So, and I probably remember some of this a little bit better than you, just because I'm a little bit older, than you.
Yeah, sure.
And it was like people, there was like, write-in campaigns, because we're talking, this show started in 87, and ran all the way to like 94. There were write-in campaigns to get Wesley off the ship. And
oh my God.
It was really, really bad. Gene Roddenberry, who died around the time, and pretty much he died during the 3rd season, who's the creator of Star Trek, of course. And he quit creative control pretty much by the time of the 3rd season. But he very much stood up for the character of Wesley, and he made it very clear that Wesley was him. Like that Wesley was. So Gene Roddenberry was parlaying his childhood in the stories onto Wesley. So I think
that's interesting.
So I think
it
that's the
reflects
point.
how he was treated.
Yeah.
Basically.
So he wanted those points in those stories where a child was being treated badly.
Yeah.
And where he was, because a lot of times what happens is that they're telling like they're just saying, shut up, Wesley, when he's telling the adults, no, this is the problem. This is what's going on. I can fix it.
And nobody will listen
to him and
take him seriously.
Right. And I imagine Gene Roddenberry dealt with that as a kid, as so many of us do.
Oh, every kid deals with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that there's an importance there. That yes, it's sad, right?
So yeah, it went over the fans' heads then, but they were saying something. They were portraying something that was very real, which is the way that children aren't taken seriously and aren't treated like full humans.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's an importance to, you know, why parents kind of sucked still then was to be able to explore the notion of parenting. Not to say that it necessarily did always a great job. There's a great line where we haven't gotten to this episode yet, but there's a great line where Picard says, you know, we should treat, you know, you should judge us by how we treat our children.
Right.
You know, and yeah, Star Trek doesn't always do a great job of that sort of thing. So,
yeah. There's so many things that are really interesting. Another thing is, like, I think I made a Facebook post about this the other day, but like what I didn't get when I was a kid was all the diplomatic relations too, and like the relationship of like the Federation to like these different planets and these different races and these different, there is actually a ton of like tribalism and collectivism in Star Trek.
Right.
And the Federation is a military dictatorship.
Yes.
It really is.
Yes.
And they think they're do-gooders. They think of themselves as heroes and do-gooders, but it is a military thing. Like the way that stuff is run on the Enterprise, everybody's calling each other captain and commander, and you have to respect your outranking officers, and you have to follow orders from the admirals. And I mean, the Starfleet itself, Starfleet Command is a galactic bureaucracy.
Yeah, and a bad one.
Yeah, they're all just ordering each other around, and it's so hierarchical. Like, you'd think by 400 years in the future, they would have gotten rid of so much hierarchy and have a more collaborative type of environment to work in. But and then like the way they portray Starfleet Academy, it's almost like this romanticized version of like West Point in the future. You know, like only the best and the brightest make it through this harsh training. And
yeah,
it's terrible. And it's kind of glorifying this militaristic culture or attitude, and that is not cool.
No, which is funny because even
and that went whoosh, right over my head when I was a 10-year-old kid.
Right. Now, a couple points on this, because like there's multiple occasions from the first season, the second season I can think of in particular, and certainly even beyond that, where they make it clear. You know, Picard makes it clear, Data makes it clear, lots of people try to quote unquote make it clear that this is not a military ship. Starfleet is not a military organization. Like it was a Peak Performance, one of my favorite episodes, where Picard is disagreeing with this battle simulation that they're going to do, because he's like, I don't think I think it's purposeless because Starfleet is not a military organization. We should not be doing these simulations. And, you know, so it's ironic, but at the end of the day, you know, no, it's a bureaucracy it's a military, you know, and they eventually go to war, and it gets worse in Star Trek's, in the Star Trek production, not in the Star Trek universe. I mean, in the universe it does too, but in the production, because I think Star Trek ran into a problem in the late 90s where the ratings were going down. And so what they did was, it's like, okay, how can we get ratings to go up? Let's have a war. And so then you have the Dominion War with Deep Space Nine. And I think that was totally in response to the fact that the ratings were going down. So they figured they'd have to make things exciting somehow. So yeah, Starfleet, you're right. It's a military dictatorship. There's really no way. And there's a lot of people that want to come out and say, oh, no, it's not that. It's trying to show us libertarian, blah, blah, you know, and no, sorry. It's you know, and it's socialistic in the bad way. You know, it's really a very serious issue. So, but at the same time, it's all still very enjoyable because the characters are very human. The stories, some of the morality is still very, very well done, very good. Yeah.
I realized too how much I think some of those characters really shaped me growing up.
Oh yeah.
Like a huge amount, actually.
Yeah.
Like Counselor Troy.
I was just going to say, you are Counselor Troy incarnate.
I always really liked her and her character and looked up to her, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I remember one time, like, reading in TV Guide. Remember TV Guide?
Oh, yes.
They had these
all the time.
They used to report on Star Trek The Next Generation a lot. And they had these interviews with the actors, like Michael Dorn, who played Worf, and Marina Sirtis, who played Counselor Troy. And like, I just remember reading these interviews, and they had pictures of them, like, without the makeup.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was really like kind of disappointing to get to know the actual actors instead of their characters.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I mean, that's the amazing thing about Patrick Stewart. It's like,
oh, his libertarian streak really impressed upon me as well. Like, I really admired him and looked up to him and wanted to be like him. And, you know.
But it's like, it's kind of impressive. Patrick Stewart's kind of a badass off camera too, you know, like, I mean, he's just, he's one of those rare few that's sort of cool, no matter where he is. But anyway, real quick, something that I never realized, and it's a shame because I consider my Star Trek knowledge to be pretty top notch, but I never realized, and I mean this in not necessarily a terrible way, how much of a Tasha Yar was.
She was portrayed in every single episode while she was alive in the first season or so. She was in some kind of sexual situation where, whether it was her going after somebody or somebody being hot for her or something like that.
She hit on every character in the show.
She fucked Data.
She fucks Data, which they turned that into an interesting part of Data's persona.
Yeah.
Down through even after she dies, because she dies in the first season. But she hits on Riker, she hits on Worf, she hits on Data. She hits on the captain. She hits on the captain. She's like, there's that line where she's like, oh, if you weren't a captain. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, who doesn't she hit on?
Yeah.
It's so bad. And then she comes from a planet where there's rape gangs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Maybe they were trying to portray some kind of manifestation of trauma or something, or sexual abuse. I don't know. But,
I don't know.
Or maybe they were just having fun with her character. The thing is,
and she was hot.
I
mean, damn.
She was hot, but I didn't even find her, out of all the women on the show, I didn't find her the most, I found her the least attractive.
Agreed.
Actually.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, she was in good shape and she's pretty, but I didn't, the short hair just did not do it for me.
Yeah, I know it never does.
No.
Yeah.
I don't like
short
hair.
mind it, but I know you, I know.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah. You like that long, wavy, dark hair or whatever.
It doesn't have to be wavy, but long and dark hair. That's my favorite.
Anyway, maybe it doesn't have to be dark either, but so anyway, I was just, I don't know. I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah.
But she was, they were tossing her at everybody, even it was the third or fourth episode of Matter of Honor where they toss her at Lutan. And she's even saying here's this big black guy, and she's like, oh, he is such a man.
Oh, is that the African planet?
Yeah. Planet Africa.
That was terrible. That was so bad.
Yeah.
And then there's this black woman and she's fighting Tasha Yar for her man, and
everybody wants him. I want him to.
That was just terrible.
Nuts. Anyway, did show off polyamory though.
That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think of that? Because there's this trope in movies that the slutty female character always dies.
Well, I don't know.
Or the gay guy dies.
Yeah, I don't know.
The black one dies.
I forget the reasons that Denise Crosby left. Which she's actually the granddaughter of Bing Crosby, the very famous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. So, I forget why exactly she left, but most people don't know this. The first or second season of The Next Generation, there was a huge, just a roller coaster of shift change.
Yeah.
Where, different.
Gates McFadden had a baby or something.
She had a baby, but not only that, but as I understand it, she left because of a writer as well. There was a certain writer on board.
Oh, wow.
And that's why she came back in the third season, because he got kicked out.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of turmoil there. And that's a lot of people say, wow, the third season, Next Generation really hit its stride. Well, that's largely because they finally got their act together. And they finally had a cohesive team. And you bring out, you start bringing in guys like Braga and Pillar and, a whole bunch of others. So that was certainly a big part of that. So I don't know why Denise Crosby exactly left, but, I got to say, as I understand it, and sadly I was still too young, even though I started, getting, really enjoying being on the convention circuit, traveling to conventions and whatever, and kind of building up some reputation. I was too young to really be able to fully appreciate, because I heard Denise Crosby, and I mean this, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Okay. Believe me, I'm not, but I guess she got pretty wild at conventions, as I understand. I heard some rumors. She was making.
Said it. I remember reading in that TV Guide interview. Mm-hmm. She said she was a sex addict and she was doing a lot of drugs too.
Yes. Yeah. She definitely had a drug problem.
And I remember reading that, and I was maybe 10 or 11 at the time. And I was thinking how could someone be a sex addict? What does that mean?
Yeah. Right.
I still don't really know what it means.
Yeah. I think that's nonsense.
Yeah. I think it's nonsense too. I think she probably just was either having a lot of sex, but maybe not in a healthy way. You know, maybe she was sort of compulsive about it, or she was feeling like she was out of control with respect to what she was doing. But yeah, like that was very weird.
Yeah, I heard because she made a couple documentaries for Star Trek, Trekkies 1 and Trekkies 2. And boy,
she wasn't picky.
Yeah, I had a buddy Lee who I won't give his last name, but not an attractive guy at all. Not an attractive guy at all. But he said things started taking place. He's actually, there's a point where he's in the film Trekkies, the first one, not the second.
Oh, wow.
And
so he got it on with Denise Crosby?
All I'm saying is I wouldn't have minded being like somehow she's hot. I'm just saying, you know, I mean, I wouldn't want to take advantage of somebody in a drug drug stupor of any kind. You know, no. This is set for full force. But anyway, so all right. Let's talk about Nemesis.
Okay.
Now that we're done talking about Denise Crosby. And please, Denise, we love you. Please, I hope none of that came off as I am a huge fan of a very active sexual appetite. So, you know, no judgment here. All right. So Star Trek Nemesis, this came out in 2002. This was the last of the, before J.J. Abrams took over and made his alternate universe of Star Trek films as late, even though those are very much sequels to Nemesis in a way, because it has to deal with Spock from that universe going back and forth. And if, there is a direct continuation, if you read the comic book, the prequel comic book that IDW brought out for the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, it shows what happens like largely after, or at least quite a decade or two after what happens in Nemesis. So Nemesis has to do with, this Riemann, like this Romulan political intrigue occurring in this sister planet. Yeah, you find out within the Romulan Empire, there's two planets, Romulus and Remus. Which has been known, that's a reference to, of course, the twins that were raised by a wolf that created the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. Which Romulus and Remus, we've known from like star charts shown off in the original series, this isn't new. Like we've known that from the beginning of Star Trek that this is so, that those planets exist, but you never find out much about Remus. Yeah, and somehow the Romulans came from the Vulcans, but they didn't lose their emotions, or they didn't value logic as much as the Vulcans did or something. Right. Yeah, there was the revolution that Surak kind of led, and they decide to split off and go away. So those damn terrorists, they no, just kidding. So there's Romulus and Remus, and the Romulans have basically sort of enslaved or oppressed the Remans. Right. And Remus is a planet that like half of it faces the sun all the time, and the other half is in darkness. And the Remans live in the dark side, and they have dilithium on the planet, which is what's used to make the warp cores. So they're mining dilithium, and they're kind of like the Remans are kind of enslaved to the Romulans, mining dilithium, and they're mistreated, abused, and stepped on and made to work. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so the Remans, essentially, they get this revolt led by a guy named Shinzon, who's actually human. You find out, again, spoiler alerts, folks. But if you haven't seen Nemesis, come on. So, and this Shinzon is actually was a one-time planned clone to replace Captain Picard. So it's a clone of Captain Picard, but a much younger one. And this clone needs to actually get a complete transfusion due to temporal DNA and all this crap, of Picard's blood. They're planning to replace Captain Picard with a clone of him that was a Romulan spy, basically. Right. And take over the Federation from the inside, work within the system. No, just kidding. Yeah, right. So they were going to do that, but they made this clone, and they raised him from a baby, but they programmed his DNA so that his aging could be accelerated or something like that if they wanted to make him look like he was as old as Captain Picard at a certain time. But then there was a change in the Romulan government, and they abandoned the plan, and the clone was sent to the Riemann dilithium mines and abused and treated like a slave. Right. And then somehow from there he rose up, and he befriended some of the Riemans, and they planned a coup to take over the whole Romulan Empire. Yeah, and so they actually pretty much they assassinate the entire Senate, the entire Romulan Senate.
They basically bomb the whole Senate.
Right.
Yeah.
And they take over. And so then the plan is that the Romulans and the Remans will go and destroy the Federation, and wipe out the Earth and whatever, and just that's the crux of the film. So another subplot that kind of starts all this in motion is apparently Dr. Noonien Sung, not to be confused with Khan Noonien Singh, the villain, but Dr. Noonien Sung created not just lore and data, because this is the creator of data, but he also created another, and before lore and data, because lore was first made and lore was screwy, and so he made data without emotions. But before lore, there was another one, and his name is B4.
B4.
And so you never, and I'll admit, like, that was weird to just put that in there, because there's no inclination. In fact, there's the episode in the fourth season, Brothers, where Noonien Sung is still alive.
Yeah, and he brings lore and data. He activates this homing signal that brings them both to his laboratory.
Right.
And he's going to give Data this emotion chip, but then he dies and lore takes it and before Data can get it. And,
yeah, but there's like no mention of...
There's no mention of B4.
Of B4, which it would have been a good time to mention it. Now, granted, I guess Sung never mentioned lore to Data, and in fact had no idea that Data even knew that lore existed, which they had previously, because lore is in the first season, blah, blah, blah. So, maybe there's some degree of sense there, but I thought that was kind of a weird, weird subplot to put in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you have, there's that in this as well. But then you have... And so there's throughout the thing, you have Data trying to get B4, like he downloads all of his memories and like all of his,
B4 is kind of like a dum-dum. Like he's like, you ask him, where are you? And he's like, I am in a room with lights.
Yeah, right. And so he, but it's all a plot actually by Shinzon, to lure the Enterprise where he wants it to be. And eventually, we don't need to give away the whole plot on it, but okay. So what did you think? I guess first off, what did you think of Nemesis? Did you enjoy it?
I liked it. Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, except for it was a little violent at times, and I didn't. I was sad that they killed off Data in the end. That sucked.
But of course, that's why we mentioned B4, because
he's got all of Data's memories.
Yeah, and at the end,
like
B4 is singing. Right, he's singing a song that Data was singing in the beginning of the movie. So the theory goes is that B4 will eventually become Data. And like I mentioned before, if you read the Countdown prequel comic book to J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie, you find out Data actually becomes captain of the Enterprise. And so Data does live on through B4. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense to kill off Data, though. Like, I know it's sad, and I agree it's sad, but it makes sense that they kill him off because Brent Spiner, who actually helped write this film, him and John Logan. Okay. They, Brent Spiner wrote it because Brent was saying, look, I'm getting old. The makeup can't cover up. Data is supposed to be practically immortal. Yeah.
But his wrinkles are really showing. And
right.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
Maybe he didn't want to go for the Botox.
Yeah, right. So I enjoyed it too. I thought it was great. And this is the thing. And I ask you this, have you ever seen any hour or any moment of Star Trek that was anything like this movie? No, it was like higher resolution. It was, I don't know, it was very different than the rest of Star Trek. Well, and that was the thing. When I remember seeing the trailer for this, and I was just like, and I remember calling up like my uncle and saying, because he was a huge Star Trek fan.
It was very different.
And I was like, I've never seen anything that looks like this. Just from the trailer, just from the preview for the movie. I was like, this is going to be insane. I'm like, because, and insane in a good way. Because there's just like the Argo, which is like this 4-wheel vehicle that they're driving around on and all this. Star Trek's never done anything like it. It was so unique. And even, and you've watched the film and I'm glad you kind of, you came to a similar assessment. Like so much of what goes on, like when Data jumps across ships,
Oh, that was so cool. He actually flies through space and he goes to this other ship, and it's really cool.
He literally just gets his running start and goes from the Enterprise E over to the Scimitar or whatever. I think that was the name of the ship, was the Scimitar, which is just this massive, gigantic Riemann warbird, that there's nothing else quite like. And that, I mean, just so many little moments like that were just so incredible that you've never seen on Star Trek before. Like, that alone made it great, was to see a lot of this action happen. Even the way the ships moved differently, everything just was kind of different. Now, the director, Stuart Baird, was actually really despised, apparently, by a lot of the crew, the director of the movie, because he never watched The Next Generation.
What?
Yeah. And so that's one of the...
Oh, come on.
Right. So this is the thing. A lot of people really don't like this movie. Most Star Trek fans, just like they don't like Star Trek 1, which I think is one of the greatest movies of all time and certainly the best Star Trek movie, in my opinion anyway. They don't like that one either. They don't like Star Trek 10. They don't like Nemesis at all. And I can see their point, I guess. And apparently Jonathan Frakes offered to direct the movie, but they wouldn't let him. And I'm sure it would have been an even better film if Frakes directed it. I don't doubt that. Yeah. He's a great director.
He was great. Yeah. He directed the other movies, didn't he? Or
a couple of them. Some of them. Yeah. First Contact and Resurrection he directed. So, but and of course Jonathan Frakes plays Commander Riker. I mean, I get that, but and the movie did very poorly. It had a $60 million budget, and it only did 67 million. So you did 7 million profit. I mean, that's not worth your time, in Hollywood terms. So, and it really, like, the fact that it bombed so badly, really ransacked the bulk of the idea of any future plans for Star Trek in general. But, like, what in particular did you really like about it? I mean, lay it out.
Okay, what did I actually really like about it? I loved a lot of the animations, I guess, or the scenes where they were showing ships like flying around. Yeah, the CGI was amazing. The design of the Enterprise E was really sexy. That was cool. I like the new, like, inside the Enterprise E too, like just the scenes that this I don't know, the setting, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, the sets and all that.
Yeah, and the CGI with, like, and they had the ship of the guy who was in charge of the Romulan Empire.
Yeah, the Scimitar. The
Scimitar, that was like just this badass like ship, and they had these horrible weapons that were like really scary. Like, it really terrified me. I was thinking, like, oh my God, they're gonna blow up the Earth.
Well, it was, I remember like seeing this for the first time, and when they said the Scimitar had like 52 torpedo bays, I'm like, 52 torpedo bays,
primary and secondary shields, and it's like 4 times the size of the Enterprise physically.
Yeah, I'm just like, holy shit, I mean, not that I'm one for ooh yay war, but it's just like to hear that in Star Trek. Here's like 52 torpedo, you just go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nuts.
It was cool at the end. This Romulan actually like helped the Enterprise beat the bad guy, basically. This Romulan ship. Yeah. That was pretty cool. And there was like this hope that they were going to make peace, that the Federation was going to make peace with the Romulans.
Right.
That was pretty cool. So it started out with Riker and Troy getting married. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I like the story of like the romance between them, but I didn't.
We don't like marriage on this show, folks.
Why do they need to get married?
Yeah, though I wouldn't have minded seeing the Beta Z marriage, because no clothing.
There was this one like sex scene between them, and they didn't show anything. It was like the most softcore thing ever.
Yeah, and
I wish
it
gets ruined because then the bad guy like busts in and like
yeah. No, agreed. That does suck. There's been better sex scenes, honestly, on the show.
Yeah, I would have liked to see way more sex in all of the Star Trek movies that I've seen.
Yeah. Now this brings up a couple interesting points. First one being, and this will lead into what something I want to discuss with it, but that you see in that marriage scene. As long as you're watching the widescreen version, which now everybody watches, but back in 2002, widescreen was kind of anathema for a lot of people. You see Wesley Crusher at the wedding. Now, Wesley Crusher in the 7th season or 6th or 7th season of The Next Generation, he goes off, he becomes a traveler. He ascends, to where he doesn't even need a starship to travel. He just travels, and so it's interesting that he comes back into Starfleet and he's wearing some command gold and he's like a lieutenant.
Come back for the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that wasn't explained.
No, they just dropped it. And here's like this golden moment to have Wesley back, which is great because he hasn't been in any of the other films.
Yeah.
And so that was cool, but they didn't do it.
And Riker gets his own command finally at the end.
He gets the Titan.
But he's been offered that like 8 million. It's been since the first season that he's been offered command positions, and he always turns them down. And
he was not going to leave that ship without Counselor Troy. That's the facts.
Yeah. Well, now he's married to her, but yeah, that's another theme that I think is interesting to talk about. Like, there's this idea in pretty much all of Star Trek that like you have to choose between having a career and having a relationship. Like all the characters are single pretty much, except Riker like fucks women sometimes, but he doesn't ever like have relationships with them really.
Yeah.
And like he and Troy like are talking about it in the early seasons of The Next Generation, and like she kind of wants to have a relationship with him, but she's like, I know you just want your own career. You want to be the captain of a starship more than anything. But then he keeps turning down these commands. And so he really doesn't. And the thing is, like, why do you have to choose? I mean, it's almost, that makes it even more militaristic because, in the military, you can't, like, that's why the whole, like, gays in the military thing was frowned upon because, or ostensibly, it's really because people are homophobic. But what they said, the reason that they gave was that we can't have people who are in love with each other like fighting together because they would get too emotional if their lover gets killed versus just their friend or something.
Right.
So I guess maybe that's why they would say, but it doesn't make sense. Like if you're living on board a starship with someone and you have time off, you can easily have a relationship.
Yeah. Well, sure. Absolutely. I agree with you completely. And it's definitely Star Trek's touch and go with that. Like, and maybe there was a lot of critique to that because the character of Sisko, of Commander Sisko in Deep Space Nine, was married and had a child. Mm-hmm. And but he loses his wife dies, actually during the Battle of Wolf 359 from, that's during Best of Both Worlds, that Borg battle. And he has to, as a single parent, raise his son on Deep Space Nine. So I think that people might have complained just enough saying, isn't that a little too military? Because you're right. Yeah. It is militaristic. And not only, Riker doesn't just say that, Picard says that he sacrifices relationships all the time.
Yep.
And it is crap.
It doesn't make sense because if now we're in this futuristic society, this socialist paradise where there's no money, right? And people are only serving on board things like, people are only doing things like joining Starfleet because they want this personal fulfillment. They're not doing it for money or anything like that. They just want to explore the galaxy and like get these abstract, like higher order needs fulfilled because they have all their basic needs taken care of. Like if you're just living your life to try to be happy, why forego relationships? That seems like a big thing that would contribute to unhappiness. Yeah. And they're not mutually exclusive. You could have both at the same time. Yeah. And certainly, but I mean, yeah, again, I agree. But you're right. There's a lot of reinforcement of that. Even like the members of, because the Enterprise D in particular is designed as a family ship. It has families on it, which Picard complains about. But, yep. There are Starfleet officers there that do have children and they do have wives and all this stuff. But they're never like the main character, they're never like a high rank, or at least you never really, maybe there is one that I can't think of at the moment, but largely they're shown as people of lower ranks. So there's almost that message of, if you have a family, yeah, you are sacrificing your career, your rising of the ranks. So yeah, that's, but who cares? Like who's keeping score? You know what I mean? No, right. Like if life is all about being happy, I mean, why sacrifice of, having a relationship? Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, something like Rick Berman had said, I remember a couple, in fact, it was probably in TV Guide. Rick Berman had said that, this was never meant to be a model of how, like a complete model of how life's supposed to be in the 24th century. But I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, because I've heard people say, including Brandon Braga,
say that, yeah, no, we were like planning this shit out.
Yeah.
And Brandon Bragg is pretty libertarian. He's a pretty libertarian guy, and he was really very much in charge of Star Trek for some time, more on the ground than even like Rick Berman was at times. So I think that's crap. They were definitely trying to push a lot of their ideologies and stuff like that. Not that Bragg got the chance to push a whole lot of libertarianism perhaps at times, but regardless. So, to say it's just a TV show, no, guys like Michael Piller and Ira Stephen Burr and stuff like that, which I actually like a lot of what Burr contributed. They were definitely treating it as a roadmap, not just a TV show. So anyway, but the point with Wesley, the fact that you see Wesley and there's no explanation of that. Unfortunately, Nemesis, there's a good hour cut out.
Oh, of deleted scenes.
Yeah. There was a DVD set that came out early on that had 7 deleted scenes. Then there was a collector's edition DVD, a 2-disc that came out later that had 14 deleted scenes on it. And I'll admit, I told you about this, but I've always wanted to make a fan edit because I haven't seen anyone else do it, because I guess nobody gives a shit about this movie, and I don't know why. Where I want to put in those 14 films.
They've got no class, no taste.
They don't. The Star Trek fans. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I want to get those 14 deleted scenes put back into it. I'd love for it to be a good, 3-hour film. I appreciate, especially when you're showing off and you do. And again, Star Trek does it pretty well as far as giving you kind of a relatively consistent experience in viewing of the future, visionary look at the future. And so
it's so funny.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but it's so funny how they make things sound futuristic by just using big words, and they say it with a completely straight face.
Yeah.
There'll be a patient in sick bay and Dr. Crusher's scanning the patient with her tricorder, and the captain's like, "What's the diagnosis?" And she's like, "His ribosomes are deteriorating. He needs a transfusion from a compatible donor of DNA," or something like that. And it doesn't make sense based on the meaning of those words, but it sounds like it does.
Yeah, which that's got to be, and that's one of the best things about watching it with you. Not only because I love you, of course, but it's fun to watch it with you because all these medical terms, and you can tell when they're just saying absolute bullshit, but it sounds good.
Yeah, it's just a bullshit word salad. It's so funny. We were watching one today, and Jordy's he was trying to diagnose something that was wrong with engineering or something, and he's like, "I've scanned the entire electromagnetic spectrum and I can't, or EM spectrum, and I can't find anything."
Yeah, it really is something when they do that. So, but anyway, they do it so well. This is something actually on a disc that came out back in the 70s on a record that came out called Inside Star Trek. There's an interview where Gene Roddenberry's interviewing Isaac Asimov, the great Isaac Asimov, and says something to the effect of, he asks, what makes Star Trek so good? It's because Asimov's complaining about how science fiction is more fantasy these days, at that time than it is actual science. And he's like, yeah, he says, you guys do that stuff too. He said, but you do it in such a believable way, and you do it in such a great way. And so, to get that kind of compliment from Isaac Asimov's about as good as you can get.
Well, they really predicted tablets, touch screens, Siri, all kinds of stuff that they wouldn't have been able to know about. Oh, what was the other thing? Even email, they, they would get encrypted subspace messages and stuff. And
oh yeah. There's a lot of, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, it does seem pretty predictive in a lot of things. And in fact, even the guys at Apple that created the iPod, which arguably started the mobile revolution, more so than even cell phones. He said that he got that idea from the fact that Data would just say, "Computer, play music." And he's like, "Oh, I want something that does that." And that's what, ended up in being
the computer is basically
iPod.
Siri. I mean,
sure.
or Amazon Echo.
Sure. I mean, yeah. And I've talked about this on Sovereign Tech before, where at the D5 conference, where Steve Jobs said, "Oh, just give me Star Trek."
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to build. And I think a lot of these companies are trying to do that.
But there's some things in it that are that showcase the dark side of technology. Like the idea that they can just, "Computer, where is Brian Sovryn on the ship?" "Brian Sovryn is in holodeck 2,
right,
that kind of thing.
Yeah. And some might want to argue, I agree with you completely. some might want to argue that you can only do that if you have a communicator on, but it's inconsistent whether or not that's that works that way. There's times where it works that way, and there's times where it doesn't. So because one would say, well, you volunteered to put on the communicator, and once again, as long as it's voluntary. So that's touch and go. But actually, the guy I mentioned earlier, Ira Stephen Burr, that they brought on in the 3rd season, and this guy was one of the lead guys behind Deep Space Nine originally. He actually despised the techno-utopianism of Star Trek. He loves Star Trek, but he says, come on, shit's got to go wrong with this stuff. This technology can't just solve everything, and it can't just always work. And there's got to be darker issues with it that you're not exploring. And that's one of the touchstones he brought to Deep Space Nine was a lot of times shit didn't work. It didn't work, or it had a bad effect or something like that. So yeah, definitely. And I appreciate that I appreciate his attitude on that.
Yeah. The only time I've really seen that happen in The Next Generation is when Data, basically, he gets this homing signal activated. He has to go back to the planet where Noonien Soong is, the guy who created him. And he gets this homing signal. And from that point on, he just stops listening to people. He goes into this fugue state, and he essentially takes over the Enterprise. Yeah,
mimics Picard's voice to change commands and everything.
So he mimics Picard's voice. And not only that, he changes his password.
Yeah.
And so then
God damn it, they're still using passwords.
Later on, Picard's trying to do something, and he's like, shit, I can't get in. I can't get into the computer because Data changed his password, and they can't they're trying to get this little boy to a medical station or something, a starbase, and they can't get him, and they've been delayed because of Data. And so, yeah, that was the only time I've seen an example of basically something going wrong with the computer or something not working in that way,
Well, there's a lot of things, you look at it because it's definitely, in a lot of ways, the main computer is centralized. And there's often times where the antagonist in the film or in the show is wanting, send us all the information you have, send us, give us a complete core dump of everything Starfleet knows that's on your ship and all that stuff. And it really makes the interesting case, hey, if the Enterprise was running off of, MaidSafe, we'd be like, fuck, sorry, man, we can't give you shit, as to where, since it's all a central server, you have an issue there. But anyway, that's reading into it with knowledge we have now. I don't. It'd
be hard to decentralize a network all through the entire quadrant.
Yeah, that's true. And they actually don't have a complete store of information because there's times where Starfleet says we'll send you what information we have, and all that. So
it's interesting too because sometimes they're trying to send these subspace communiques from Starfleet to the Enterprise or something, and they're like, well, we could send a message to Starfleet, but with where we are, it'll take 3 days to reach them or something.
Right. Well, that runs off of a relay system. You have subspace relays that are just laid out throughout and this becomes important in the show Star Trek Enterprise. That was the last Star Trek show. In that, since it's the start of Starfleet, they're laying out those relays. You get to see them, and it becomes a major plot point. So that's interesting. But anyway, the
other thing too about the technology. Okay, they've got all this technology. They can go at warp speed. They can do all kinds of shit, fancy, crazy things, but they haven't fixed aging. They can mend a broken bone within 2 seconds, but they haven't fixed aging. They haven't even cured male pattern baldness, which we were talking about that the other day with Wes. And he's like, I'm not hopeful that they're going to cure aging anytime soon. They haven't even figured out how to freaking regrow hair on men's heads when they go bald. So until we do that.
Really. Yeah. So, I mean, people do live longer. In the first episode of The Next Generation, Dr. McCoy is 135 years old. So people do live somewhat longer, but they still die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, that percentage wise, I imagine that's somehow impressive, but it's not like people are living 200, 300, 500 years.
Well, except that Vulcans
can live over 200. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
But then they lose their minds and their feelings go out of control. All the feelings they've been repressing for the last 200 years somehow have to come out.
Yeah, of course you're talking about Sarek, Spock's father. Yeah. So anyway, let's see, where were we with this? Oh yeah, I'd love for there to be the 3-hour version of this film. I like I love long movies. I love complete pictures. I love sweeping, and apparently a lot of the things that, like, maybe there would have been more sex scenes, because that's what was claimed about this 50 minutes of footage missing from Nemesis is character interactions, which would have been great. So, maybe one day we can get all that. I don't know. It's the same problem. Actually, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which those two movies are somewhat similar, even though Nemesis has a shit ton more action. But like in tone, I feel like they're kind of similar. And The Motion Picture, of course, that's a movie with the original series characters. It's the same deal where there is, they planned out like a 3.5 hour long film. And they at one point were talking about that they would make a full 3.5 hour long version of The Motion Picture, and they would actually use storyboards. Instead of putting in like scenes that were never filmed, they would put in the storyboards and just have the actors like talk over it, which that'd be difficult to do because now, sadly, many of them are dying. So anyway, but my point is I wouldn't mind seeing that. I'd love that. People don't seem to mind these Lord of the Rings movies that are 5 hours long, a shot, so why the fuck not do it with Star Trek? But anyway, so unfortunately this movie bombed. I'm not really sure why. Are there any reasons you can think of that you'd want to theorize on?
Nobody likes it when you kill off Data.
Yeah, but see, the thing is that arguably the most popular Star Trek movie, which is Star Trek II, they kill off Spock, who is much loved. So
that's true.
But yeah, I hear you. But at the same time, I think you got to agree. Like, it was the reasons for killing off Data made sense. I mean, Brent Spiner just can't.
He saved the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The way they did it was good, and also
Brent Spiner. Yeah, he was getting old.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't really get it. Like, there was even the cool cameo by Admiral Janeway. It was Catherine Janeway there. She was on, and I thought that was really cool for her to be there. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know. People could email Brian@zomiofflinegames.com. I'd actually be interested to hear why people don't like this movie, because I haven't really heard a great answer.
Yeah, one other thing about that movie, the actor who played the young Jean-Luc Picard, the clone.
Yes.
He was actually a pretty good match for like his face and the way he looked.
Yeah.
And he had the accent was down.
Yeah.
That was interesting. It brought up some issues of like, if someone has the same genetics as you, but different environment, like how similar are they going to be to you? And Picard said in the movie a couple times how shocked he was at how similar the clone was to him.
Yeah.
And he was like predicting certain things that he would do, but yet also the clone was portrayed as just having this horrific childhood, which essentially turned him into like this sociopathic murderer as an adult.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was essentially, forced to work in these mines. He was enslaved as a child, beat up and all kinds of stuff. He had like scars all over his face. And those obviously represent like the mental scars of the abusive childhood and
sure.
being cast aside when he no longer served the political purpose of the Romulans. And, he was going to take out his pain on everybody. He was going to destroy. He had this very powerful weapon. He was going to use it to destroy Earth and the Federation and like everything. And for seemingly no really good reason other than he was just acting out and in a lot of pain. Right.
Yeah.
So it brought up the issues of like nature versus nurture and like childhood and its impact on people's destructiveness or self-destructiveness as adults, Sure,
I think it's an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah,
in my opinion, and I think
maybe that's why people didn't like the movie. Though.
Yeah, that could be, and maybe So the average reason given why that people didn't like the movie is they just said they were tired of Star Trek. Like that.
What? How could you be tired of Star Trek?
I know, and
that's bullshit.
Yeah, I don't buy that, and the reason I don't buy that is because I remember growing up, and this is like. This is in the Next Generation's heyday, when it's still on television. So we're talking, early 90s. And there were like advertisements for Blockbuster where this woman cracks a joke, oh, not another Star Trek movie, and all this stuff. So people had always been sick. Or like, if that's the answer, that's crap, because you've always heard people saying they're sick and tired of Star Trek, of it being out there. So yeah, I don't buy that, either, but I'll admit that like revealing, like, I think they drew out the mysteries and the reasons for what's happening for way too long in the film. That's the only real critique I have of it. Like, I think what you said makes sense, but you don't find out about like just all the reasoning for why Shinzan's doing what he's doing until much later on in the film. And so I think you're too busy trying to figure that out. And so you don't have enough time to process what exactly that all means, you know, from a philosophical perspective, like you brought out, which I think is actually pretty insightful and interesting.
Yeah.
So, but overall, again, I love it. I think it's a great movie. There's no other Star Trek quite like it. Unfortunately, because it did so poorly as far as, money wise, there was going to be a sequel. There was going to be another movie after this. And in fact, speaking of TV Guide again, I remember reading in TV Guide, where John Logan and Brent Spiner were saying, we've got a script going on. We've got big plans for Star Trek if this does well, and some of those plans, I know what those are. Some of those plans, I don't know, maybe they never really had them or what, I don't know. And this is the thing too, this is an interesting point to bring up, is that, now that we're rewatching some of this stuff, I mean, when the bulk of Star Trek aired, the internet was not what it is today, like with Wikipedia, to where you just had this, deluge of background production information. That even when you bought like a popular thing to sell for television shows back in the day was companion books. Right. Where they told you like season by season, like this was popular with Babylon 5, where there was a season by season companion book that would tell you about the production of each episode in the show. Larry Nemesis actually wrote a Star Trek compendium, or Next Generation compendium, which actually gave you background behind each episode, what happened there, what it was like on the set and all that. But now you can look up most of the stuff on Wikipedia. And even to this day, I'm still learning new shit. About each thing that went down. So maybe some of the information's, not out there as to, maybe there was a whole lot that was going to be done, if this was successful, because they were definitely taking Star Trek in a very, very different direction. I do know that if this did well, Brent Spiner and John Logan, the guys that wrote Nemesis, did have a plan for a final movie, an 11th movie that would have wrapped up everything with the crew of the Enterprise E. And so this was before J.J. Abrams, plans were put into place. And so you probably would have ended up with the Enterprise E blowing up, and you would have had, maybe they would have
Enterprise F.
You would have ended up with the Enterprise F, and probably B4 would have been given a different head. Yeah. So that you could replace Brent Spiner, but Brent Spiner was still writing it. So he was still involved, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they would have used Spiner's voice or something. I don't know. But that never happened. And there's actually been a ton of Star Trek, like after that movie, there were a ton of things that they were going to do with Star Trek. Like J. Michael Straczynski of the aforementioned Babylon 5 was planning to do a reboot. William Shatner wanted to do a Star Trek Academy thing. There's like 10 or 12 projects. Like Bryan Singer wanted to do Star Trek Federation. There's a whole slew of things that people wanted.
Star Trek Federation.
Yeah.
that sounds pretty statist.
Yeah. It was kind of weird because it was supposed to take place in like the year 3000.
Wow.
As to where the Next Generation takes place in the 2300s. So this is way into the future. There was going to be like a web series where I forget the name of it, but there's going to be a web series where actually you find out that warp drive is pretty much like destroying, like you can't use warp drive anymore.
Oh,
in the future, where there's a Next Generation episode that deals with that, where it's like an environmental concern, is that the warp drive is actually destroying and creating like these rifts in space,
pitting the socialist do-gooders against the environmentalists. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, but of course, Starfleet says, "Well, we're going to use it anyway."
Yeah, because they're a military dictatorship.
That was a really confusing episode. I'll be interested when we get to that because I forget which one it was, but I think it's like in the 5th season, and I took it at the time is saying, wait a minute, because like they said, look, we can only use warp 5 and we can only go to warp 9 under the most extreme of circumstances. And I'm like, wait a minute. So why is everybody still using like warp drive? What's going on here and all this stuff? But some people have told me later on that they just meant in that region of space where it was a problem. So, but anyway, the Star Trek Federation show was supposed to be like an animated series of sorts, or no, the Federation show wasn't. That web animated series one was supposed to be, and it was supposed to be way in the future, and Starfleet's kind of become decadent and whatever. I don't know. Anyway. And they can't use warp drive, so they're just defending their territory, blah, 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 blah. And there was going to be a movie called Star Trek The Beginning, which that was being made by Rick Berman, and it was supposed to have this character Tiberius Chase, who was supposed to take place between Enterprise and the original series, and it was like kind of a progenitor to Captain Kirk, and it was supposed to do with the Earth-Romulan War. That none of that happened, and we ended up with J.J. Abrams' versions of Star Trek, which whatever. You saw Into Darkness, but you haven't watched the first of these movies yet.
Not yet.
Which we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. It's taking me a while. I've probably watched more movies and TV in the last couple months than I have in a really long time.
Yeah. So, but Star Trek's still enjoyable to watch, right? I mean,
absolutely.
What are you enjoying about it right now more than anything?
Just picking up on the things that I didn't pick up on when I was a kid, and the libertarian themes, mostly just the ethical and sort of like, you don't find that stuff in TV now.
No, you don't. You really don't.
You never find shows that explore philosophical issues, especially of sort of a libertarian nature.
Yeah, I mean, someone's going to email and say Black Mirror and some others, and I know those exist, but by and large, it's not to this like level, I think.
Yeah, no.
And please refrain from emailing me about the new Battlestar Galactica, because I totally disagree with you that had any kind of great moral message. It had none, because go ahead and tell me one good guy in that show. Oh, wait, there aren't any good guys. Oh, shit. Anyway, but that's besides the point. So, yeah, I agree with you. I appreciate Star Trek for its, something that gets said often, but just for its optimism that we're still going to be here. That humanity's not going to fall into necessarily disarray, even though it's not a very perfect future now that we look at it as anarchists.
Even with AI. Yeah, I mean, there were some really interesting philosophical issues brought up about how to treat AI that, like data that has its own will. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Measure of a Man is a really great episode where he's on trial for his life. Does he even have life and things like that? And I think that has pretty powerful implications, even to today. When we're doing AI. So Star Trek still has its value. It's still very enjoyable, and some of the characters are positively sexy. I've gone on record saying I think Captain Picard, not necessarily Patrick Stewart, but Captain Picard is probably the sexiest man to ever live.
He's really sexy.
I mean, he is something else. Just in his attitude, the whole shtick.
And in all of the movies, pretty much, everybody else looked like a lot older between the Next Generation series and in the movies.
Yeah.
He looked like he didn't age a freaking day.
Yeah, the guy, it's that
Must
Earl
be all
Grey,
that Earl Grey.
It's the Earl Grey tea, and you know me, I'm drinking that stuff, all the time, because I'm hoping it'll do the same.
He just looks fantastic. Like,
he does.
I'd probably fuck him. I mean, I
don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. Hell, fuck. What, you think I wouldn't want to be in on that? I had a three-way with Captain Picard. Anyway, sorry. All right.
Well, the thing is, like, Patrick Stewart himself is actually a lot like the character from everything I've seen. He's very into like theater, and he, he had the whole thing about like why I need feminism. Now people are going to email us dirty emails,
this is going to get bad. All right. You dropped the F word.
But yeah, like he was just, I don't know. He actually really did seem like just like the character of Captain Picard. He was like standing up for people who he thought needed his help, and he was into the poetic and sort of romantic and philosophical side of life. And yeah.
No, agreed. And actually one of the best ones, it was a recent episode you and I watched that, boy, I loved the speech Picard gave in that, going back to Picard, was, it's saying, it's when Data creates his daughter, Lal.
Oh, yeah.
And Starfleet wants to take Lal, and use and Picard just says, it's like, you think I'm going to let, I'm going to force a member of my crew to turn his child over to the state? Not while I'm his captain. And like, that was just amazing to hear him say, turn his child over to the state. I mean, anyway.
Yes. He's admitting that Starfleet is the state.
Is the state. Yeah. So no doubts there. Right. But anyway, Nemesis, great movie. If you haven't watched it, I recommend watching it. Stephanie, do you recommend people if they have the free time?
Yes.
Yeah. So it has the stamp of approval from the lovely.
That's something you like to do. Yeah. I always hate to tell people what to do, but yeah, if you have the free time and desire, I thought it was pretty cool, and you might enjoy it too.
Yeah. It's a great film. I really liked it. And Jupiter Ascending also, I thought a fantastic
especially if you
film.
can catch it in 3D. It's worth watching in 3D because it has all these little like flying scenes and like where they're zooming through Chicago, in the air and falling through buildings and going on high-speed chases. That looks really cool in 3D.
Yep, agreed. They did do an excellent job with the 3D on that. And overall, it's just a fun story. It's nothing serious. It's not as like, it doesn't deserve as much exploration as we were giving Star Trek. But it was definitely a good time.
Definitely.
Especially if you enjoyed Flash Gordon, like I said, you will really, really, in my opinion, I think you'll love this movie. So anyway, boy, what else do you want to talk about? Or are we good?
I think I'm almost talked out. How long have we been going?
About 2 hours.
Oh, well,
we always end up just
timing,
talking 2 hours.
I know.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay.
No, this was really fun to talk about.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was good to kind of get that out there. I had to get some stuff off my chest about Jupiter Ascending because, I mean, I don't want to say I knew it was going to be a great movie, but I knew the critics were just way off. Everything I read ahead of time, I was like, you guys, okay, so you don't know. Then don't go saying don't go watch this because you don't understand. That's anyway. So that's that. All right. Carpe Lucem, everybody. Or, what, Stephanie, you started off the show. Like a Golden Stallion.
I was going to suggest the same thing.
Why don't you go for it?
I have to think of some clever sexual innuendo to end off with.
All right.
Well, we've got some warp drive to do. We're going to be engaging our matter, antimatter, and dilithium crystals. So everybody out there, take me to sick bay because I need a full exam.
The doctor of love.
That's right. Make it so. Engage. Carpe Lucem. Seize the space. See you on the other side in the other wormhole.
Or yeah, all right. That's good. I was going to do, Love Boat The Next Generation with Patrick Stewart. Set a course.
For love. That's perfect.
See you on the other side of it.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.
So
Shit.
that's okay.
I fucked it up.
No, you do not fuck it up, but we are recording.
Oh, we're recording? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.